Live from New Delhi, you're watching DD India News Hour, India's voice to the world. I'm Tanvi Taneja, coming up in the next hour. After ceasefire announcement, Israel alleges violation by Iran. Tehran denies the claim. Trump warns both nations, asserts to hold the ceasefire. India says no alternative to dialogue and diplomacy for conflict resolution in West Asia as it continues to evacuate stranded Indians from Iran and Israel under Operation Sindhu. NATO Chief Mark Rutte says Europe and US must meet rearmament challenges together. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky seeks more help with air defense against Russia. And in a first, India enters the top 100 list for its progress in achieving Sustainable Development Goals (SDGs). Nordic nations continue to top the index. The West Asia conflict on Tuesday took the world on a roller coaster of twists and turns, from missile strikes to broken ceasefires, and then against all odds, a ceasefire finally taking effect. The world may be breathing a cautious sigh of relief, but peace still hangs by a thread. Here's how events unfolded on Tuesday.
Amid the chaos and confusion in the region, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu held a crucial phone call with US President Donald Trump. The conversation came after explosions were reported in Tehran, believed to be retaliation for Iran's missile barrage that killed 4 Israeli civilians. Netanyahu's office confirmed that no further Israeli strikes were launched following the call. President Trump, currently en route to the NATO Summit in the Netherlands, announced a ceasefire between Israel and Iran. In a social media post, he said, Israel is not going to attack Iran. All planes will turn around and head home while doing a friendly plane wave to Iran. Nobody will be hurt. The ceasefire is in effect. The announcement followed Trump's strong rebuke of both Israel and Iran for violating an earlier ceasefire agreement just hours after it was declared.
Yeah, I do. They violated it, but Israel violated it too. Israel, as soon as we made the deal, they came out and they dropped a load of bombs, the likes of which I'd never seen before. The biggest load that we've seen. I'm not happy with Israel. You know, when I say, okay, now you have 12 hours, you don't go out in the first hour and just drop everything you have on them. So I'm not happy with them. I'm not happy with Iran either.
Responding to the US move, Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian said, Iran will honor the ceasefire, but only if Israel adheres to it as well. Speaking to Malaysian Prime Minister, Iranian President said, if the Zionist regime does not violate the ceasefire, Iran will not violate it either. World leaders have welcomed the development, calling the ceasefire a hopeful step towards de-escalation in the Middle East and greater global stability.
We therefore welcome the US President's call for a ceasefire. If this ceasefire succeeds following the decisive military strikes by the US and the Israeli army against Iran's nuclear facilities in Fordo, Natanz and Isfahan, then it will be a very positive development that can make the Middle East and the world safer. We now call on both Iran and Israel to heed this call from the American president.
However, uncertainty remains. Multiple nations continue to evacuate their citizens from the region, with fears lingering over a possible breakdown of fragile truce.
Now I know what being scared actually feels like. I don't think I've known fear like this before.
While the ceasefire brings a temporary calm, the region remains on the edge. Global powers are urging restraint, even as evacuations continue amid fears of renewed conflict. All eyes now remain on Tehran and Tel Aviv and whether this fragile truce will hold. Bureau Report, DD India.
DD India's Jessica Taneja joins us live on the story now. Jessica, what is the latest? Is the ceasefire holding or not as of now, after Trump lashed out at both Israel and Iran for violating the truce?
Well, then we just saw a few moments ago when US President Donald Trump was on board, going on board the Air Force One to leave for the NATO Summit in Hague. He had briefly expressed his frustration with the ceasefire that was brokered by him late last night. But again, in the morning when he wakes up to find out that it was violated, and both Iran and Israel exchanged missiles, and there were counterclaims and a potential threat to this escalation, to which he did say that he used certain words which would not be appropriate for television. And that is a level of frustration that we're witnessing from the United States administration on the whole when it comes to the Israel-Iran conflict and the continuous simmering of tensions in West Asia as we speak. Now, as he has left for the NATO summit, there seems to be an understanding and a phone call, as we understand as well. Not sure about those reports, but some of the American media is reporting right now that President Donald Trump has had a word with the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu about the recent developments and prevent any further escalation, so to say. Well, his representative and mediator Steve Witkoff has also been put in action to see on how this fragile ceasefire that was brokered just last night did not survive till today. And there is hope, in fact, expressed by the American president that this will hold at least another 12 days if there are no further counter-strikes from each other.
Okay. Jessica, what is the road ahead for Israel and Iran from here on?
Well, then you and I have both heard about regime change. We've heard about Iran's nuclear facilities not being completely obliterated, as the US president had said after the 3 strikes on the nuclear facilities in Iran. But what we can understand and assess from the ongoing situation, we also reported about the evacuation still taking place. There was an attack on an airbase, Al Udeida Air Base, the American base in Qatar yesterday, with prior warning to Qatar. So there was not much that did take place in that region, except just hitting missiles, which were particularly pointless in a sense that they would not have caused any significant damage. But with the tensions that we're witnessing in the region, Israel on its part would certainly want to continue with the escalation, or as they say, their military operations till the time Israel as a state is satisfied that there is no potential threat of Iran developing a nuclear weapon. Well, from common sources and knowledge that is available in public, then it is believed that Iran has about 400 kilos of enriched uranium, and how much of it is 60%. There's still no clear understanding of that, and how much can potentially be made to 80% or 90%, which is weapons-grade uranium, and to what effect and how much time would it take for them to develop those weapons, and how many more facilities are there except what the Americans have struck, which is Fordo, Natanz, and Isfahan. Well, there are multiple facilities and multiple sources from the Iranian regime also to suggest that a lot of those centrifuges, as well as that in which uranium was moved much before the American strike. So there's a lot of uncertainty, because this entire conflict rests on the fact whether Iran has nuclear weapons or not. Has it been able to develop it? And if not, then how close is it to developing those nuclear weapons? And that's certainly where the entire conflict is right now sitting on. And with what we've seen from the Israeli actions in the recent past, from June 13 to now, is Iran's military has been weakened. Its air defenses were taken down. Not only Iran's air defense is taken down, both Syria and Iraq, for the Israelis to conduct their military operations, in Iran. So it has completely been brought down to its knees. And one will only wait and see on how the responses are from Iran, given its limited capability right now to strike Israel. Okay. So only time will tell on how this escalates. But for the moment, it does look like at least a very temporary and a very fragile ceasefire still exists as you and I speak, at least.
Okay, thank you very much, Jessica Taneja, for dissecting the story for us. Now, with the ongoing recent developments in West Asia, India has been following developments overnight relating to the conflict between Iran and Israel, including the US action against Iran's nuclear facilities and Iranian retaliation against US military bases in Qatar. In a statement, India says that they remain deeply concerned about the prospects for overall and sustained regional security and stability. It was said that India welcomes reports of a ceasefire between Iran and Israel and the role played by the United States and Qatar in bringing it about. It further reads that India wishes to reiterate that there is no alternative to dialogue and diplomacy in order to address and resolve the multiple conflicts in the region. India stands ready to play its part in these efforts and hopes that all concerned parties will work towards sustained peace and stability. Now, India's Operation Sindhu continues in full swing. Special flights have been arranged from multiple places to evacuate people who are stuck in the war-torn region. India's Minister of State for External Affairs, Pabitra Margarita, received 281 Indians, 3 Sri Lankans and 2 Nepalese nationals evacuated from Iran. A total of 2,576 Indians have been evacuated from Iran so far, along with 6 foreigners also evacuated from Iran. And these include 4 Sri Lankans and 2 Nepalese citizens. And 594 Indians have been evacuated from Israel so far.
मैं थैंक्स करूंगा सरकार का, इसलिए कि वहाँ पर जो सेफ्टी सरकार ने दी है, यानी सारे सिटीज़ से एक जगह जमा किया, जो मशहद सिटी थी, सारे से कुम से, अराक से, इस्फहान से, गुरगान से, हर जगह से मशहद बुलवाए और सेफ्टी वहाँ से लेकर आए। और मशहद में जितने भी दिन रहे, 2 दिन 3 दिन, सारे होटल्स का खर्चा, खाने वगैरह का सब, यानी इन टोटल पूरा भारत की सरकार ने किया है और हम इस बारे में इसको थैंक्स कहते हैं।
So Tuesday saw the evacuation of 268 Indians when a third flight from Sharm el-Sheikh landed on Tuesday carrying 268 Indians from Israel. The C-17 Globemaster of the Indian Air Force with the airlifted Indians arrived in Delhi. The flight was received by Union Minister L. Murugan. Earlier in the day, an Indian Air Force C-17 flight evacuated 165 Indian nationals from Israel. They were also received by Minister of State Dr. L. Murugan upon arrival in Delhi Tuesday morning. The aircraft arrived from Amman, Jordan. Another batch of 161 Indian nationals were evacuated from Amman, Jordan. Minister of State Pabitra Margarita received them and said that the safety and security of Indian nationals abroad remains the highest priority for the government. You're watching DD India News. Still to come on this show. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky and UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer agreed to share battlefield technology that will see Kiev and London produce long-range drones together. India's National Security Advisor asks to shun double standards in the fight against terrorism at the Shanghai Cooperation Organization's NSA conclave in Beijing. And hundreds of firefighters battle wildfires on Greece's Chios Island for the 3rd day.
Geopolitics and trade deals. Economic challenges amid development. Hard work and the path to prosperity. It's the economy always. Between walkers, money is what money does and says. Supply creates its own demand. Between the bulls pulls and bears tears. When supply chains globalization and India rises to the podium. We'll get you centered with the Economic Brief at 8 p.m. every Thursday on DD India.
Welcome back. You're watching DD India News. I am Tanvi Taneja. On to Europe now. Member nations of NATO are meeting in The Hague for a crucial 2-day summit with a focus on boosting defense spending and strengthening transatlantic ties. NATO Chief Mark Rutte emphasized the need for united industrial efforts to counter Russian aggression. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky on his part called for increased support, especially in air defense. US President Donald Trump is also attending and is expected to meet Zelensky during the summit.
Hike in defense spending is expected to top the agenda as member nations of the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, NATO, are holding a two-day summit in The Hague starting Tuesday. NATO's Secretary General Mark Rutte urged Europe and America to come together to meet the challenge of rearmament. He added, the alliance must win this new war of production against Russia.
There's no defense without a strong defense industry. And there's no European security without a strong transatlantic bond. So we need to bring down barriers and encourage truly transatlantic defense cooperation. Only Europe and North America together can rise up and meet the challenge.
Ahead of the summit, President Volodymyr Zelensky, who is also in The Hague, urged the NATO allies to increase investments in Ukrainian defense production and to crack down on foreign components Russia is using for its weapons production. He reiterated that Ukraine still needed help with air defense.
We still need air defense, and we still have support on this direction from the partners, and really count on continuation and also co-production and big military support that you said about it. Thank you so much. 35 plus. So this is very important things, very important signals. I'm thankful for our strong friendship to you and to all allies.
US President Donald Trump is joining the NATO meet in The Hague and is expected to meet the Ukrainian president. At the summit, members are expected to discuss and approve a hike in defense spending. The alliance aims to strengthen unity and production to counter rising threats, especially from Russia. Mohammad Afzarul Hassan's report for DD India.
So seeking to shore up support in the Ukraine conflict, President Volodymyr Zelensky met UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer during a surprise visit to London on Monday. They signed an agreement to share battlefield technology that will see Ukraine and the UK produce long-range drones together, which will be capable of striking targets in Russia. Zelensky also plans to meet US President Donald Trump at the NATO summit in The Hague and discuss purchasing a defense package from the US, a large part of which consists of air defense systems.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky and British Prime Minister Keir Starmer announced a new defense co-production initiative in London on Monday. This aims to strengthen Kyiv's defense against Russia. The two leaders announced the deal in the garden of Starmer's Downing Street residence, where they also met Ukrainian troops being trained in Britain.
And I'm really proud that this afternoon we're able to announce an industrial military co-production agreement, the first of its kind so far as Ukraine and the UK are concerned, which will be a massive step forward now in the contribution that we can continue to make. And is really a symbol of not only our joint work in this conflict, but the 100-year agreement that we have put in place.
And we are very thankful to UK, all your team and people of the United Kingdom for such big support of Ukraine from the very beginning of this war.
From London, President Zelensky arrived in Amsterdam to attend the NATO summit in The Hague. Ukraine's wartime leader has been a central figure at recent summits, but given his fractious relationship with Trump, Zelensky has not been invited to the main working session with NATO members. But Zelensky said he planned to meet with US President Donald Trump during the summit. Sources said that their discussion would focus on Ukraine's purchase of a defense package, a large part of which consists of air defense systems. And the leaders would also discuss more sanctions against Russia and a price cap on oil. Zelensky, however, finds himself sidelined, downgraded from center stage to mere attendee, reflecting the alliance's delicate balancing act. Leaders aim to push for a ceasefire and ramp up pressure on Russia while avoiding direct mention of Ukraine's NATO membership bid, which Trump opposes. The summit also seeks to send a clear message to Moscow that NATO stands united despite previous US criticisms and shifting global priorities. Bureau Report, DD, India.
Back to Asia, India's National Security Advisor Ajit Doval held a crucial meeting with China's Foreign Minister Wang Yi in Beijing. During the meeting, both sides reviewed recent developments in India-China bilateral ties and underscored the need to promote the overall development of ties. India's NSA also emphasized the need to counter terrorism in all its forms and manifestations to maintain overall peace and stability in the region. Views were also exchanged on other bilateral, regional and global issues of mutual interest. On Tuesday, Alexander Venediktov, Deputy Secretary of the Security Council of the Russian Federation, called on National Security Advisor of India, Ajit Doval, on the sidelines of the 20th meeting of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization Security Council Secretaries. The two sides discussed issues of bilateral, regional and international importance. The Russian side conveyed that they were looking forward to receiving NSA Doval in Russia for the next round of the strategic dialogue at an early date. Earlier, India's National Security Advisor Ajit Doval attended the Shanghai Cooperation Organization's NSA conclave in Beijing, where he emphasized the importance of combating terrorism to ensure regional peace and stability. He added that India is deeply concerned about continued threat from terror groups designated by the UNSC, including LET, JEM, Al-Qaeda and its affiliates, and ISIS and its affiliates. India launched Operation Sindoor to dismantle terror infrastructure in response to the barbaric terror attack on April 22nd in Pahalgam. A proxy of LET, TRF, the resistance front, killed 26 Indians and Nepalese nationals after segregating them on the basis of religion. India's actions were measured and non-escalatory. Ajit Doval highlighted the need to shun double standards in the fight against terrorism. The NSA reiterated that any act of terror, including cross-border terrorism, is a crime against humanity. India called on the SCO members to hold accountable the perpetrators, organizers, financiers and sponsors of acts of cross-border terror and to help bring them to justice. The NSA requested support for several important Indian proposals, including algorithm of joint actions to counter challenges posed by international terrorist organizations, joint measures to counter radicalization leading to terrorism, and joint information operation to counter extremist ideology. Greece, Europe's southernmost tip, is often hit by wildfires during its hot and dry summers, but authorities have blamed a fast-changing climate for fueling more destructive blazes in recent years. Meanwhile, millions of people sweltered across the United States northeast and midwest in record high heat. Scientists have warned that such extremes are fast becoming the new normal. Hundreds of firefighters were battling to contain wildfires at different locations on the Greek island of Chios for a third day on Tuesday after the island declared a state of emergency. Authorities issued a new alert on Tuesday advising residents of a seaside village southwest of Chios, the island's capital, to leave as white smoke rose over a nearby beach.
The fire came close to the houses, but thanks to the volunteers of the village, the A volunteer team and others, we succeeded in keeping it away. These are terrifying moments. For the first hours, we were alone, we fought. Then help came because the fronts were large and in many places help came here, thank God. We cannot battle with the weather phenomena.
Greece, Europe's southernmost tip, is often hit by wildfires during its hot and dry summers, but authorities have blamed a fast-changing climate for fueling more destructive blazes in recent years. Elsewhere in North America, tens of millions of people sweltered across the U.S. Northeast and Midwest on Monday as record-high heat disrupted electricity supplies and train travel. Some East Coast trains were halted en route for safety precautions on Monday.
I mean, yeah, this is a crazy heat wave we got going on, especially tomorrow is going to be up to 100. Yeah. I know we've had a couple last year, but I think this is going to be a lot more extreme than the ones we've had in previous years.
Health experts urged employers to adjust working hours for outdoor laborers to ensure that they had adequate breaks and opportunities for hydration and to monitor for signs of heat stroke or exhaustion. In East Asia, parts of southern China have been battered by heavy rains since last week as the annual monsoon kicked into high gear, breaking rainfall records in parts of China. Multiple rivers burst their banks after days of rain in flood-hit province of Guizhou, the southwestern end of a seasonal rain belt that stretches all the way to Japan. At least two riverside cities, Gongqiang and Rongjiang, each with a population of over 300,000, on Tuesday told residents on the banks of fast-rising rivers and in low-lying areas to flee. While China is no stranger to summer floods, some scientists warn that climate change is ushering in heavier and more frequent rain. Bureau Report, DD India. Moving on now, India has for the first time secured a place among the top 100 out of 193 countries ranked for their progress in achieving the Sustainable Development Goals, SDGs, according to a report published on Tuesday. According to the UN Sustainable Development Solutions Network's 10th and the latest Sustainable Development Report, India ranks 99th on the 2025 SDG index with a score of 67, while China ranks 49th with 74.4 and the US at the 44th position with 75.2 points. Whereas Nordic nations continue to top the index with Finland ranking first, Sweden second and Denmark at the third place. The relationship between India and the UAE has strengthened over the past decade. Riding on this growing relationship between India and the UAE-India SEPA Council Startup Series was launched on Tuesday in New Delhi, where the UAE will help Indian startups soft launch in the Emirates. Speaking more about the India-UAE SEPA Council Startup Series and the India-UAE relations, Ambassador of the UAE to India, Dr. Abdul Nasir Jamal Al-Shale spoke to DD India's Dibendu Mondal.
On the sidelines of the UAE-India SEPA Council Startup Series here in New Delhi, I'm joined by the Ambassador of UAE to India. Welcome to Doordarshan. So what is this Startup Series all about and what does it aim to achieve?
So we're going to open up for applications today. And startups can submit their pitches, they'll be screened, evaluated, and then they'll be, if successful, they'll have an opportunity to come and present them in person. Once that is done and they actually do qualify, they'll be supported to expand their startups into the UAE in terms of business licensing, trade licensing, understanding the rules and regulations of the land, and being able to also get financing and capital if that is something that they are after.
Right. And how do you look at the startup environment in India and how do you see the UAE market good for the Indian startup?
It's one of the most solid ecosystems around the world, and we're lucky to basically be in proximity of India and being able to do something like Startup Series, and last year we have done the Founders Retreat. So there's a lot of focus when it comes to startups as a very interesting chapter in this relationship, and a chapter that will drive the numbers between the two countries in terms of bilateral trade and investment further.
Well, you spoke about the bilateral trade between India and the UAE. How do you see SEPA being able to step up investment and trade ties between the two countries?
Quite successful. So today we're looking at numbers where bilateral trade have exceeded $80 billion, non-oil bilateral trade have exceeded $50 billion. The UAE from the year 2000 onwards have invested more than $20 billion. $10 billion were invested in startups in the past few years. So there's a lot of interest, there's a lot of excitement, and SEPA, believe it or not, has an article 13.2 that's specifically focused on startups, and this is what we're doing today.
Great. Thank you so much for speaking to Doordarshan, and we hope India and UAE ties grow stronger from here on.
Thank you so much.
With camera person Manmohan, this is Dibendu from New Delhi for DD India.
In a bid to boost the domestic manufacturing of electric vehicles, the Indian government on Tuesday announced the launch portal of the application process under the scheme to promote manufacturing of electric passenger cars in India. The application portal would be open for applications from June 24th till October 21st. This scheme has been formulated under the leadership of Prime Minister Narendra Modi, keeping in mind the goals of Net Zero 2070 and Make in India and Atmanirbhar Bharat. Under this initiative, global EV manufacturers will be able to invest in India. And now we take a look at other stories making news around the world. In Chile's Atacama Desert, the driest place on earth, scientists are pioneering a novel way to grow crops by harvesting water from fog. Using specially designed nets to capture moisture droplets from fog, growers are now cultivating lettuce, lemons and more, despite the region's extreme aridity. Greece is stepping up maritime security by deploying 2 frigates and an additional naval vessel off the coast of Libya in a bid to curb the rising number of migrant arrivals. The move comes amid a surge in sea arrivals from northeastern Libya, with migrants mostly from North Africa and conflict-ridden Sudan. The Reuben Observatory in Chile has released its first images of deep space, showcasing millions of galaxies, stars and asteroids. Reuben Observatory's initial photographs have revealed a stunning cosmic tapestry displaying panoramic view of the Virgo galaxy cluster. Indian astronaut Shubhanshu Shukla's Axiom 4 mission to the International Space Station is now eyeing a launch on June 25th. The Axiom 4 mission, which marks the return to space for India, Hungary and Poland, was earlier scheduled for liftoff from NASA's Kennedy Space Center in Florida on June 25th. On board SpaceX's Falcon 9 rocket, the mission was originally scheduled for liftoff on May 29th, but was then put off to June 8th, then June 10th and June 1st. Earlier, when engineers detected a liquid oxygen leak in the boosters of the Falcon 9 rocket, NASA also detected leaks in the aging Russian module of the International Space Station. The launch was then planned for June 19th, and then on June 22nd, it was put off to allow NASA evaluate operations of the ISS after repairs in the Russian module. And going back to our top story of the Iran-Israel tensions, global oil prices extended losses on Tuesday to hit a 2-week low on what the market viewed as lower risk of supply disruptions in West Asia. Though US President Donald Trump accused both Israel and Iran of violating a ceasefire, he helped to broker. So Brent crude was down 4.9% at $67.96 a barrel when reports last came in. US crude also fell 4.9% to $65.09 a barrel. Both contracts lost as much as 5% in early trade after Trump announced a ceasefire agreement between Israel and Iran. And Arvind Gupta, former Deputy National Security Advisor of India, joins us on DD India News Hour. Mr. Arvind also is Director at the Vivekanand International Foundation, a think tank based in New Delhi. Welcome, sir. In your opinion, is the Iran-Israel ceasefire likely to hold? If not, why?
I think it will hold. The ceasefire has been a result of both sides engaging with each other in a deadly exchange of rockets and missiles. And I think both wanted the ceasefire, and Trump played a role. And of course, the ceasefires are always tenuous, and there could be some violations now and then. But overall, I think it's likely to hold, and the region has returned to less tensions than it would have led to a wider conflagration. And both sides have agreed for the ceasefire, so that's why it might.
Okay, what do you think were the military and political calculations that made both Israel and, more importantly, Iran agree to a ceasefire?
My own understanding is that Israel perhaps overreached. It launched attacks, and it could not sustain for too long. And when it realized that it required the US help to damage the sites which are deep underground. It asked the US to help. So that is the first sign of weakness, that you could not do it alone. And when the conflict stretched on for 10 days or so, Israel started feeling the heat, and the Israel's own interceptors, probably they were running out of the interceptors, and the Israeli and Iranian missiles started reaching and doing quite considerable damage to a small country like Israel. So Israel found itself in a situation where it had reached. So it would probably would have agreed to a kind of a ceasefire. On the other hand, Iran held on. The initial strikes were very heavy. A lot of people were killed, top scientists were killed, top military leadership was wiped out, but Iran showed resilience and it held on. It absorbed the initial damages and bombs and rockets and missiles, and in turn also launched strikes which harmed Israel. And Iran, being a much larger country and also have a history of taking and absorbing a lot of punishment, as it did in the 1980s. So it held on. There was no resistance to Khomeini, and the whole country got united. And the damage to the nuclear sites was there, but perhaps not to the extent that Israel had thought. So Iran, in this war of attrition, perhaps Iran did fared better. And then I think they also, of course, suffered a lot of damage, and they were not averse to a off-ramp, as they call it. And both sides agreed for a ceasefire.
Okay. Would the just-ended Iran-Israel conflict in any way have eroded the authority of Ayatollah Ali Khamenei?
It doesn't look like. Because, as I said, Iran held out. It showed resilience. And whatever damage the top leadership of the Iranian military and IRGC and the nuclear establishment was wiped out, but they were able to replace it very quickly. So on the whole, I think Khamenei has emerged stronger, and now they are claiming victory. And they're saying that their attack on the US base in Qatar, which is also the forward headquarters of CENTCOM, that showed that Iran's resolve. And Iran is now giving out a narrative that it was a resolute response by Iran which made Israel and its supporters sue for peace. So I think Khamenei has emerged stronger.
How far has the Iran-Israel conflict weakened Iran militarily, in your view?
Well, obviously, they have suffered quite a lot of damage. But in a war that happens, and they will start rebuilding it.
Okay. And what role has the United States of America played in helping Israel achieve its goals in its conflict with Iran?
Well, Israel's goals were to destroy the nuclear facilities of Iran. And President Trump claimed that using the B-2 bombers and the MOP ordnance, those bombs, they totally obliterated the sites. So they can claim that they have damaged the nuclear sites. But now I think many assessments are coming out that the damage was perhaps minimal. And the Iranians had probably already cleared out those sites from the enriched uranium, etc. So the damage probably is limited and not irretrievable. And perhaps Iran will restart their program, if not now, maybe after some delay.
Okay. Would you say, Mr. Gupta, that the world is a safer place today than it was before the Israel-Iran conflict?
Yes, I think somewhat safer. Because if let us for a moment assume that Iran had attacked the US bases, more US bases, and the US had retaliated, then Iran would not have been able to take the military might of the US, and US would have got involved. US decided not to get involved and broker a ceasefire. And I think the tensions have come down. And today we are certainly much safer.
Is Iran likely to sit on its hands, so to speak, after the ceasefire? Or will it look at unconventional ways to hit back at those that have recently attacked it?
I think Iran will certainly review its policies. I think the first priority would be to rebuild the civilian areas that have been damaged, rebuild the facilities that have been damaged, and attend to basically the task of reconstruction and rebuilding. So that will be their first priority. The second possibility could be that there could be restart of diplomacy insofar as the nuclear program is concerned, whether we would see a restart of negotiations between Iran and the US. That could be a possibility, though it's not very clear when will that happen, if that happens at all. And the third thing that they would do then is to take stock of who was with them, who was not with them, what are the new equations which now will be reinforced in the Middle East, and also the state of their proxies, etc. But I think I feel that they will perhaps restrain those proxies insofar as attacking the US is concerned, because I don't think Iran wants to provoke the US in any military conflict. But yes, these proxies probably will be also rebuilt, and they are not going to give them up altogether.
And your views on a possible regime change in Iran?
Unlikely.
Unlikely. Okay. We'll end this discussion on that note. Yes, for now, a fragile ceasefire holds. Next few 24 hours are definitely crucial to see that this ceasefire holds or not. Thank you very much, Arvind Gupta, for being with us and giving us your analysis on the story. All right. Let's now revisit the dark chapter of India's democracy. June 1975, a radio crackled, a nation held its breath. With one announcement, democracy dimmed and dictatorship took root. The emergency wasn't just a political storm, it was a direct assault on the Indian constitution, the courts and the citizens. In our next report, we revisit the verdict that shook the government and the silence that followed.
भाइयों और बहनों, राष्ट्रपति जी ने आपातकाल की घोषणा की है।
This announcement marked the beginning of one of the darkest chapters in India's democratic history, a time of unprecedented repression. But what triggered it was a judicial verdict from the Allahabad High Court, and the Supreme Court's refusal to fully stay that order. On June 12, 1975, Justice Jagmohan Lal Sinha of the Allahabad High Court delivered a landmark judgment declaring then Prime Minister Indira Gandhi's 1971 election from the Rai Bareli constituency null and void due to electoral malpractices. Indira Gandhi appealed to the Supreme Court, where Justice V.R. Krishna Iyer refused to grant a full stay on the High Court's ruling on June 24, 1975. The very next day, the emergency was imposed. What followed was an era of authoritarianism, and democracy in India was pushed to the brink. Fundamental rights guaranteed, equality before law, right to life and personal liberty were suspended immediately after the declaration. By January 1976, Article 19 was also suspended, effectively snatching away the rights of free speech, press, association and peaceful assembly. As the machinery of state suppression kicked in, the judiciary wasn't spared either. Lawyers who dared to speak out in defense of civil liberties were arrested. In March 1976, without any prior notice, 200 chambers of practicing lawyers at Delhi's 30 Hazari Court were demolished, and 43 lawyers were sent to jail. Soon, attention turned to High Court judges who had passed verdicts against the government's excesses. Many were transferred or faced punitive action for their rulings. But the most prominent casualty of judicial independence during the emergency was Justice H.R. Khanna. He was the senior-most judge in the Supreme Court and the natural successor to become the Chief Justice of India. But in the ADM Jabalpur case, where the core issue was the suspension of fundamental rights during emergency, Justice Khanna stood alone in dissent.
जो आतंक का माहौल था उसमें जजों को इतना जबरदस्त डराया गया। ANRA का केस पहले से ही चल रहा था, यानी 7-8 जजों को सुपरसीड करके जो ANRA को चीफ जस्टिस बनाया था, तो वैसे भी जुडिशरी डरी हुई थी। तो जबलपुर का एक केस है जिसमें जीने का अधिकार भी जुडिशरी के माध्यम से इंदिरा गांधी सरकार ने नागरिकों से छीन लिया था।
His principal stand cost him dearly. The Indira Gandhi government superseded him and appointed a junior judge, Justice Mirza Hamidullah Beg, as the Chief Justice instead. In protest, Justice Khanna resigned the very same day.
Justice Khanna यह स्वीकार करने के लिए तैयार नहीं थे कि किसी भी हालत में सरकार द्वारा किसी नागरिक से उसके जीने का हक और अदालत में न्याय मांगने का अधिकार यह छीन लिया गया। अपने डिसेंटिंग जजमेंट के लिए जस्टिस खन्ना को क्या कीमत चुकानी पड़ी है, यह बात भारतीय लोकतंत्र के सबसे काले अध्याय के पन्नों में अंकित है।
Indira Gandhi's authoritarian grip extended to the constitution itself, which she amended multiple times during the emergency to consolidate her power. The 38th Amendment took away the judiciary's power to review the emergency. The 39th Amendment barred courts from questioning the election of the Prime Minister altogether. But the most alarming was the 42nd Amendment, often called the mini-constitution, which altered 40 different provisions of the constitution under Article 368. In independent India's 75-year constitutional history, this remains the only amendment that even changed the preamble of the Constitution. The very soul of the Constitution was suffocated during the emergency. Bureau Report, DD India.
All right, let's bring you more news of the present date now. Defence Minister Rajnath Singh has authorised the Chief of Defence Staff and the Secretary Department of Military Affairs to issue joint orders for the Army, Navy and the Air Force. The new approach replaced the earlier system where individual services issued their own orders for matters involving more than one forces, often leading to duplication and inefficiencies. The first such joint order, titled Approval, Promulgation and Numbering of Joint Instructions and Joint Orders, was issued on Tuesday. It focuses on streamlining procedures, eliminating redundancies across the three services. Prime Minister Narendra Modi inaugurated the centenary celebration of the historic conversation between two of India's greatest spiritual and moral leaders, Sri Narayana Guru and Mahatma Gandhi, on Tuesday in New Delhi. The celebration brings together spiritual leaders and other members to reflect upon and commemorate the visionary dialogue that continues to shape India's social and moral fabric. It stands as a powerful tribute to the shared vision of social justice, unity and spiritual harmony championed by both. Highlighting India's capability, Prime Minister Modi said that Operation Sindoor made India's firm policy against terrorism very clear before the world. He added that India has shown that no place is safe for terrorists who spill Indians' blood.
हाल में दुनिया ने ये भी देखा है कि भारत का सामर्थ्य क्या है। ऑपरेशन सिंदूर आतंकवाद के खिलाफ भारत की कठोर नीति को दुनिया के सामने एकदम स्पष्ट कर दिया है। हमने दिखा दिया है कि भारतीयों का खून बहाने वाले आतंकियों के लिए कोई भी ठिकाना सुरक्षित नहीं है।
Sri Narayana Guru, a saint, philosopher and fearless social reformer from Kerala, reshaped India's spiritual and social landscape. Here's more about the man who preached unity in a divided society. A revolutionary thinker who transformed the social fabric of India with his progressive thoughts. Born on August 22, 1856 in Chemparanti near Thiruvananthapuram, Sri Narayana Guru belonged to the Irava community, a section of society long subjected to caste discrimination. From these humble roots emerged a social reformer who challenged centuries-old hierarchies and orthodox traditions. Guru's message was simple yet powerful. One caste, one religion, one God for humanity. He consecrated a Shivalingam at Aruvipuram in 1888. A bold act defying Brahmin monopoly over temple rituals. Over his lifetime, he established more than 40 temples open to all castes, spreading a message of equality. Through institutions like the Shivagiri Math, Aluva Ashram and the SNDP Yogam, he championed education, spiritual upliftment and social reform for the marginalized. Guru's influence extended well beyond Kerala. During the Vaikom Satyagraha, his ideals of non-violence and dignity inspired national leaders, including Father of the Nation Mahatma Gandhi. The 1925 conversation with Mahatma Gandhi at Shivagiri became a landmark in the national narrative on caste and social justice. As a poet and philosopher, Guru penned works like Advaita Dipika and Daivadashakam, blending spirituality with social consciousness. Nearly a century after his passing, Sri Narayana Guru's legacy lives on, reminding us that real progress begins with equality, compassion and courage. Bureau Report, DD India. And next we take a look at other stories making news in India. Home Minister Amit Shah chaired the 25th meeting of Central Zonal Council at Varanasi in the North Indian state of Uttar Pradesh. The meeting was attended by Chief Ministers of the Central Zonal Council along with senior government officials. The council acts as a platform for interstate cooperation and coordination on various issues. Niti Aayog released the third edition of its Insight series, Future Front, titled India's Data Imperative, the Pivot Towards Quality. The report underscores the urgent need for robust data quality to fortify digital governance, cultivate public trust and ensure efficient service delivery. In a major boost to India's indigenous defence capabilities, DRDO's Armament Research and Development Establishment in Pune has successfully developed a close-quarter battle carbine. Designed for combat in confined spaces like buildings or bunkers, the carbine offers modern ergonomics and enhanced lethality. You're watching DD India News Hour. Time now for some sporting action. India wicketkeeper batter Rishabh Pant has been handed an official reprimand for breaching level 1 of the ICC Code of Conduct during the Headingley Test. In addition, one demerit point has been added to Pant's disciplinary record. The ICC found that Pant had breached Article 2.8 of the ICC Code of Conduct for players and player support personnel, which relates to showing dissent at an umpire's decision during an international match. The incident occurred in the 61st over of England's first innings when Pant was having a discussion with the umpires regarding the condition of the ball. Now, Cricket Australia has announced the schedule for the upcoming Australia A Women's Series against India A, set to take place across Queensland in August. Australian captain Elisa Haley and vice-captain Tahlia McGrath will feature in the series as part of their preparations for the upcoming ICC Women's World Cup. The multi-format series begins with a 3-match T20 leg starting from August the 7th. The tour then moves to Brisbane for a 3-match 50-over series at the Northern Suburbs Cricket Club. The series will conclude with a 4-day clash at the iconic Allan Border Field from 21st to 24th of August. Now, from sports to entertainment now, Indian animator and filmmaker Suresh Eryath made history, winning the jury award for the best commissioned film at the prestigious Annecy International Animation Festival 2025 for his short stop-motion film Desi Oon. Desi Un is a 6-minute visual tribute to India's pastoral traditions and the Deccani sheep, highlighting indigenous wool and the communities that have preserved this heritage despite the pressures of industrialization. The film also won Waves 2025 in Mumbai and has been shortlisted for Cannes Lions 2025. The recognition marks a significant milestone for the Indian animation on the global stage. And the sports film F1 is set to have its worldwide theatrical release this week, and it's already generating buzz for blending real racing action with Hollywood storytelling. Starring Brad Pitt as a comeback driver, the movie aims to deliver an authentic look at the world of Formula One. DD India's Diptanshu Kashyap reports.
Blending high-speed action with heartfelt emotions, F1 tells the story of retired racer Sonny Hayes, played by Brad Pitt, who returns to the track to help a struggling team and mentor rising rookie Joshua Pierce, portrayed by Damson Idris. The film was shot during real Formula One Grand Prix weekends. Pitt and Idris trained for months and performed their own high-speed driving using modified Formula 2 cars to replicate Grand Prix conditions.
No, it's a nutty idea. It's like you're going to take actors and put them in real cars and embed them in the racing season. This was our director, Joe Kaczynski. We couldn't have done it, you know, without F1 and all the teams, the principals, the drivers who all played a part of this movie. You'll see them; they're all over this movie.
The excitement around F1 began with star-studded premieres in Times Square and London, drawing in crowds of racing fans and film lovers. Hollywood icon Tom Cruise, who worked with director Joseph Kosinski on Top Gun Maverick, surprised the cast on the red carpet in a show of support. Much of the film was shot live during real Grand Prix events, with Pitt and Idris reaching speeds of up to 180 miles per hour.
I think we had over 5,000 hours of footage for this film that we had to squeeze down to 2.5. So you're going to get the absolute best shots we had, I promise you. And it took about 2 years to cut this film together.
F1 races into IMAX cinemas globally on June 25, with a wider release across North America, India, Japan and more on June 27th. With real cars, real speed and raw emotion, this promises to be one of the most immersive racing films ever made. Diptanshu Kashyap's report for DD India.
That's all for this edition of DD India News Hour. Do let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. Connect with us on our different social media handles at DD India Live. And you can also download our DD India mobile app for quick news and updates on the go. We'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Tanvi Taneja from all of us here in New Delhi. Thank you for watching. Namaskar.